Discussion of what is the reason that so many people refuse to obey the gospel. That's okay. That's okay. That was funny. I look up and I see Fred in a panic mode. Now I got to redo my wires. I got all excited. I didn't know what all was going on. Oh, microphones? Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, I need help. So what was the number one commandment? Jesus got asked that question once. What's the number one rule? We always like to know what's the most important thing. I'm like that a lot. You know, what's the biggest thing I got to deal with today, right? What's the number one rule?
Stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble? For you, Bob, that is probably exactly the number one rule. But what did Jesus say was the number one rule, number one commandment? Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? Heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love God. So when we come together to worship on Sunday morning, what's most important? Loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Expressing that love to God. That's what we're doing, right? So why is the number one command, love God and love your neighbor, why is the number one command not go to church on Sunday morning? Why isn't that the number one command? You're going to serve God in whatever role He wants you to serve if you love God first, right? So when you love God first and you put Him first, everything else falls in line, right? It kind of figures itself out as you go. So when we talk about what's most important, one of the things that we have to realize is that everything falls after we first bend our knee to God, right? When we bend the knee and He becomes our master, then everything after that will flow in the direction it should flow because we're putting Him first. And when you put first things first, everything else is going to fall in line. This goes, turn your Bibles to Hebrews. I want to go back here and look for just a second. Hebrews 11. I think this helps show the truth of putting God first. And this is one of the reasons, well, this is actually the very first reason, and really only reason that people don't obey the gospel is because they don't love God. Even people that are Christians, baptized Christians, many times don't love God because they're not believing Him and they're not obeying Him. They've been baptized, they've come to Christ, but for whatever reason they've put Christ off, or He's left, he's gone from the number one spot down to anything except the number one spot. Any place the Lord lands after number one is going to be a problem in our life, right? So that's part of the issue that we've got, is we've got to know that God goes number one and everything else will flow. So look in Hebrews chapter 11, and this is going to kind of reveal to us another reason why so many people just refuse to obey the gospel. Verse 23 of Hebrews 11, by faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw that he was a beautiful child and they were not afraid of the king's edict. So what was the king's edict that they're discussing here? Killing them all, right? So did Moses' mother take her life in her hands when she did this? Hit him? She did. But she was also very clever about the way that she did it, because this is her son and she loves him. So she's going to do everything she can to protect him. And so she did protect him, and she ends up raising him, right? And so it's no accident that as Moses grew up, even though he grew up in Pharaoh's household, and he grew up with all the education of the Egyptians, what did Moses also know? Who he was. He knew who he was. He wasn't a child of Pharaoh. He was a child of God's. And he learned that, right? And so as we continue reading, by faith Moses then, because the verse 23 is about his parents' position. They trusted God. They loved God. They wanted to serve God. They were not afraid of the king. King can do what kings do. They had their faith in God. By faith, Moses, how did Moses get faith? How did Moses learn about his faith? From his mother, right? From his mother. Even though he was growing up over in this world, he was being taught about the real world that he came from, right? So by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather, now notice this, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. So even thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, God was calling his people to do what? Choose him over riches. Choose God over pleasure. That's what his mother taught him. That's how he came to that grasp of what it meant to serve God. He was much more comfortable. He was at ease. Choosing, think about this. This is a man that would have the command of armies, vast armies, tens of thousands of soldiers, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, would be people that would bend their knee to him because he's the ruler, he's the head, he's the leader. He's been given this authority by the Pharaoh, and he is in that spot. He could have had everything that goes with that. All the wealth, all the popularity, all the acknowledgement, all the praise. And he turned it all down. For what reason? Considering the reproach of Christ greater riches. Now, did he know Christ? Did Moses know Jesus? No, he knew the Father, right? He knew the Father, but the Father was who? Who was God that Moses spoke to at the burning bush? It was Christ. That was Christ pre-incarnate, right? So he was dealing with the Lord a long time ago. And he knew what he had to do, and he was going to serve the Lord. He wasn't going to serve the king. He was going to serve the Lord. And that's what he chose. And he considered that to be greater riches. So what's the problem that we have a lot of times with people today? The reason that so many people do not want to become a Christian or a follower of Christ.
They don't want to give up the pleasures of the world.
They don't want to give up the world. Why don't they want to give up the world? What's the reason? Is it difficult to follow Christ? Is it easy or is it hard to follow Christ? It's kind of both, isn't it? It's easier than the world. If you live out in the world long enough, it's easier than the world. Is it easy to follow Christ, though? It's not always easy, is it? Because of some of the same kind of problems that Moses had to deal with and he had to work through. Have you ever been reproached because of your faith? Have you ever had people slander you, say ugly things to you because of what you believe? If you've been doing very much at all, you've probably had that happen to you. And Moses considered that to be greater riches. The reproaches, the attitude, in fact, his life in submitting to God and doing what he did, he surrendered his life. He gave it all away. He was no longer working with the king. He was working for the Lord. Justin?
Maybe it's because of our foundations class, but can we go and talk a little bit about what does it actually mean to love God?
What does it mean to love God?
Because we understand, the New Testament is written in Greek, and there's lots of different types of love that are expressed by different words that kind of describe how that love is carried out. Like my love for my mother is different than the love for my wife, and the love for my children, and the love for my brothers and sisters, and love for friends, and they're all different. They're all different types of love, and we can see, part of the love that God has for us is a sacrificial love. He's sacrificed But what can we really do for God? God doesn't need anything from us. So what can we really do? And what does it actually mean to love God? Because the thing I struggle, I think, with sometimes is, you know, we talk about Christ being a brother. Well, Christ is also my creator. He's our God, so he's worthy of our worship. And it seems too friendly. The relationship seems, I struggle with that part of it sometimes.
Okay.
So
Why is that, do you think? It's a great, I don't know if it's a question or dilemma that you've presented, but why is that? Why do you think we're that way?
why do I think that way?
Yeah.
I mean, partially, I think it's because of the situation that I grew up in as far as growing into an adult. I grew into adult in a very structured
Yeah.
environment where those over you are not your friend.
Right.
Those people over you are over you, and there is a respect due that goes past any friendship.
Right.
And that was actually frowned upon. It was called fraternization,
Right.
to have a friendship with those who are appointed over you.
Yeah, Fred, when you were a colonel, was it okay for you to hang out with the corporals and the PFCs?
I'm a bad example of to use in this case, and the reason I say that is because of what my mission was. We set alert as a crew, and our crew had 2 officers, actually 3 officers and an enlisted man, and the 4 of us would sit a week at a time, and we ended up knowing each other by our first names. We lived like in a firehouse, on call 24 hours a day. In case the red light came on and the horn blew, we'd go to nuclear war. So it was a little bit, so it was a crew concept. And so we did have an enlisted member in the crew, and the structure was not quite as stringent between the officer rank and enlisted rank.
Right.
And it caused problems because we had a lot of enlisted people marrying officers, because that barrier wasn't there that should have been there. And it was because of the mission we had, and because of the close quarters that we kept.
So tell us about why was there a barrier there? What was the purpose of the barrier that you felt?
Well, the barrier that's supposed to be there is because the officer, if a decision has to be made and he has to ask people to go die, then there has to be, you can't be that person's friend, in the sense, I don't want my friend to go die.
Right.
And so with the Air Force, that's why they call the Air Force, not a real military unit in that sense, because they don't have the same barriers as like the Marines or the Army or the Navy, because there's really not that as much separation between the officer corps and the enlisted corps, and it's evident to the other branches.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I'm not a good example, because I was always a crew dog.
Okay, scratch what Fred just said.
I had a completely different experience in the Air Force because
Fred.
I
That
was
was actually good.
because I was attached to a special forces unit, and it was very structure driven. In special forces, it's very structure driven. Somebody is giving orders, and you do not. There's no questioning the orders, because there's a time to develop that relationship of trust. But when the orders are being given is not the time.
Right. So how does that relate then to the church? Because what's the structure in the kingdom?
Yeah.
There's Christ, and then there's everybody else, right?
Kind of. But we have those appointed over us in the
We
faith
do.
here as well.
Right.
And I know me and you have struggled with this, because you've been an elder for a while. And I have a different view of the eldership role and the respect and reverence that's due those, and you don't quite see it the same way.
Right. I don't. You had your hand up. I'm sorry. Oh, was that yours, Cindy? Sorry.
Yes, I was just thinking, when Justin said that, God doesn't need anything from us or expect, or how, I'm not sure, I don't want to paraphrase you, because I don't remember exactly what you said, but it brought to mind when he said it that, he does expect obedience. So when you're a child, you have to be obedient to your parent. When you're a staff sergeant, you have to be obedient to your XO. I mean, there's all these It doesn't matter where in life,
Right.
you always have to answer to someone and follow the rules. I mean, if you're truly being obedient. And so that's what comes to mind to me when we talk about what he expects from us.
Okay. Okay. Good thoughts. Anybody else? Okay, so when we get back to Hebrews 11, so Moses, in his attitude of looking at the Pharaoh and looking at being a ruler and everything that went with that, and when he compared that to all that he learned from his mother, from all the education that he had gained from her, and an understanding of, just growing up and becoming a man, he saw the difference. He saw the difference in God's people. He saw the way God had blessed them. And now he saw how the Egyptians were tormenting them and creating problems with them. It'd be like, I guess, if I went over to Ireland and I'm Irish or Scottish or whatever my last name means I'm from, I go over there and I start... this is not a good example. I'm trying to figure out how we can relate Jesus to being our friend and our Lord at the same time. And that can be somewhat difficult because I think most of us in our minds are used to structure. It starts at home, then you go to school and you got the principal. I don't remember any kid getting excited when he was pointed to, like I was a few times, get to the principal's office right now, young man, and I had to go. Nobody gets excited about that because he's not your friend. He's not there to be my buddy. He's there to be my teacher or my coach or whatever position he's in. And that's the struggle that we have sometimes. And God, it's not exactly like that with the Lord, right? He calls us a brother. He calls us a friend because he wants us in that relationship.
What Jesse said this morning in that scripture that he took from Jeremiah chapter 2, to me was very profound when he says, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and have hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can't hold water." And I see that of what these people who have left organized religion because of hypocrisy or whatever they saw, that they say, "I don't need that. My parents did that, but I don't need that because, I can have God at home." What happens is they create to themselves their own cistern that's cracked. And I see a lot of people who are very religious, and they said, I have God, but they don't want to submit to the authority. And this, when you go out to find your own salvation, you need to be very careful about creating this broken cistern for yourself and thinking, because I think my biggest problem with my father and not being able to study with him is because he didn't want to submit to the authority of Scripture. Mm-hmm. That there was somebody above him who he'd have to submit to, and I think he wanted to take care of himself, and I see that prevalent today. Is that people want to have a religion to themselves, what they think are comfortable with, instead of submitting to authority.
Submitting to authority is hard because we're very individualistic and we don't like being told what to do. I don't know very many people that just love being told what to do. Most of us are very independent and we don't like that. But if you're going to serve God, you can have no ego. There's no place for ego in the kingdom. There's no place for any of us feeling like we're any better. I don't care if you're an elder or a deacon. I don't care who you are in the church. You're no different than anybody else. We're all sinners in need of the grace of Christ, right? And that's the message that we need to get out. Nobody's better or worse than anybody else. We just have different roles, might have different functions, different strengths, different talents. Paul, when he was writing to the church at Corinth, talked about all the human body has lots of different parts. And just because you're the ear and not the eye doesn't mean you don't have a role. We don't have our eyes and our ears getting into fights over who's more important. The brain would have an argument. The heart would have an argument. The stomach would have an argument. Yeah, go without food for a few days. See how important I am, right? The feet would have an argument. They're the reason I'm able to go anywhere. Take my feet away from me and I'm on wheels. I'm not going to have to be going around in a wheelchair or crutches or something crazy, right? We all have our part. Nobody's ever any better or any worse. There's Jesus and then there's the rest of us as far as relationships in the kingdom go. And so what I like about Moses' attitude here that he learned from his mother clearly was that there are things more important than money. There are things more important than status, things more important than your work, things more important than there's nothing more important though than your soul. Nothing more important than that. And so when we go out and we try to reach out to people, we got to remind ourselves of what the number one goal is. And it's not just coming to church. Coming to church is awesome. To me, gathering together on the Lord's Day is a reaction to us wanting to express to God how we feel. He's commanded us to come together on the first day of the week for that reason, to remember Him, to remember His suffering, to remember His sacrifice, and to remind ourselves of what this is all about. Right?
I was going to piggyback on what Justin said, that question, I heard this said by traditional Catholics and who are trying to go back to the Latin Mass and who criticize modern day religion and saying it's those people who want Jesus as their boyfriend. And that really kind of is kind of what Justin is talking about. You know, they want this really personal relationship with Jesus, and they want it to, and they all almost make it out like he's my boyfriend instead of being my, you know. And I think the true relationship that we should have when we're talking about Jesus being our friend is, I look at more as Jesus is a servant leader. You know, and He taught His disciples, whoever's going to be greatest is going to be a servant. So I think that's the kind of friendship maybe where we recognize His authority, but even if we're in a position to serve, we have to learn how to serve others, and that puts you on kind of a level playing field, or even you're making yourself lower than the playing field that you're supposed to be going at. So it's a different kind of authority. It's not the normal picture we have, but it's I think it's maybe because we're supposed to be servants or serve
And how did you describe Jesus? He was what for us? The warrior servant?
servant leader.
Servant leader.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, because Jesus came, did Jesus come leading or did He come serving? Serving. Jesus left heaven to come and serve. He didn't come here to become the commander. That's what everybody else wanted Him to be, right? They tried to take Him by force and make Him king. And Jesus was like, no, that's not what this is about. My kingdom isn't of this world. If it was, my servants would fight. And if Jesus was here to establish an earthly kingdom, would we be able to stop Him? No, nobody would have been able to stop Him. So if that's what He was after and about, there wouldn't have been a fight about it. It never would have happened, right? So Jesus is a servant leader, and what does He ask us to do? Serve. That's the number one goal. Our number one job is to go serve. And you do that because you love God, and you love Christ, and you love the Word, and you want to go do what God wants you to do. That's a servant leader. That's what Jesus did, and Jesus isn't asking us to do anything that He hasn't already done. Sacrifice, you want to talk about how much you have to give up? Right? Really? You want to bring that up? You want to talk about sacrifice to Jesus? You want to talk about commitment to Jesus? We can't. All we can do is try to follow Him as close as we can. That's the best that we can do. And the good news is God's okay with that. Just give me your best. Other than that, I won't ask for anything more. And I can remember when I was coaching kids in football, we would say that to them all the time. Failure is not the problem. It's if you're quitting, that's the problem. You never fail as long as you keep trying. You never lose as long as you keep trying. Just keep working on it, keep working on it, keep working on it. You'll get better. The goal here is to get better and to grow. That's the goal. And that's our goal here in the kingdom, right? Love God, love His Word, love His people. That's our role to one another. Go to Mark chapter 8. This is another dilemma that Moses understood very well. You don't really have to go there. I'll just read Mark 8:36. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and what? Lose his soul. Moses understood that. I think he understood that concept. He would rather forfeit all the riches of Egypt. Forfeit every bit of that. This would be something like, I don't know, if we had a king and his son was getting ready, the king was getting old or whatever, and he was going to bring his son, and his son goes, nope. I'm going to go out into the field. I want to go work. That's what was impressive about Charles and who were the two brothers? Harry and William, right? In England. Both of those boys went off into the military. They didn't have to, but that's what they wanted to do. They felt like that's what a leader was. A leader did that, and so they wanted to become leaders, and so they went into that position to serve. So leaders have to serve. That's what it's about. We all have to serve. We all have to give. And there is nothing else that we could ever gain. According to Mark chapter 8, verse 36, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? What would a man give in exchange for his soul? Think about this. What do we give in exchange for our health? Think about what we do for our health. The hospitals that are built, the doctors, the amount of money. How much money do you think goes into medicine every year in this country? It's billions and billions of dollars, right, that goes into medical care because we want our health. Somebody once said, if you have your health, you have everything. There's a lot of truth to that. You can be broke and healthy. Would you rather be broke and healthy or wealthy and an invalid? I know what I'd take. I've been broke most of my life anyway, so that part of it isn't a big deal to me. But we would always give more for our health. How much more than for our spiritual health? How much more for our soul? That's what we want to help people understand, is what are you trading? You're trading something. Every day of your life you make a choice and you're making a trade. What we have to figure out is the trade a good trade? Is it a profitable trade for us? Any thoughts, comments? Okay, let's look down at John chapter 3. I'm going to go here. John chapter 3, look down at verse 19. This is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men love the darkness rather than the light. Why do men like darkness? That doesn't make any sense. I hate darkness. Most people I know, little kids. What's a big fear of little kids? When you turn out the light and they go to bed. What are they afraid of? Monsters under the bed. I remember Justin saying to me, Dad, did you check the closet? I'd open up the closet. Yeah, no monsters in there. Okay. Then he was fine, right? Just as long as he had his pet monster next to him in bed and there was no monsters under the bed or monsters in the closet, we were all good. He could go to sleep, I could go to sleep, everybody's happy, right? Is that what this means? That kind of darkness? Men love darkness. I don't know anybody that I just love being in a dark room and hearing and seeing nothing for days and weeks at a time. Nobody does that. Well, maybe some people do that, but that would be weird. What do you think? What's this talking about? Men love the darkness rather than the light. Why? Bob?
You can hide your evil in the dark.
That's what it says here. Their deeds were evil, right? So we want to help people understand that you don't have to be. Do you have to be evil to be in the dark? No, you really don't have to be involved in a bunch of evil to be in the dark. The world's full of darkness, isn't it? And our job is to bring light. I think that's the whole reason God invented light. and he was trying to give an identity to sin. Sin is bad. Sin is nasty. It's like darkness. It's like dirt. It's like, it's just death. You look at what happens when you die. Your body decomposes. You're not even close to what you used to be, right? Darkness, not good. God created these things so that every day we've got like the sun's going down now. It's getting dark earlier and earlier. It's one of the reasons I hate that daylight savings times and all that. It just seems like it's dark all the time this time of year now. You get up and go to work and it's dark. You come home and it's dark and it's very depressing. We don't like darkness. So what's this mean that men love the darkness rather than the light? Verse 20, for everyone who does evil hates the light. Be careful not to become somebody that by the way you're living, it looks like you love the darkness and hate the light. Because we can do that. We can go off and decide that we're going to live our life in a way that we're just going to give ourselves to every pleasure, everything. When Kathy and I were growing up in the 60s, it was, if it feels good, do it. That was a phrase. If it feels good, do it. Satisfy yourself. Men enjoy darkness rather than light. That's what that's talking about. When we just want to pleasure and please ourselves, and we just want our life to be as good as we can make it. Don't worry about the wife. Don't worry about the husband. Don't worry about the house. Don't worry about the kids. Don't worry about work. Just take care of yourself. Or the only thing that's in your life is your wife and your kids and your job and nothing else. Right? We have to see ourselves as people of light that's always giving out light and trying to share light and to pull people out of darkness. Any thoughts, comments? Okay. Verse 21, he who practices the truth is doing what? Where are they coming to? To the light, so that his deeds may be manifested. So people in the darkness want to hide their life. Children of light want to manifest their life. They want to manifest the light in their life, right? That's what we should be, people of light, not people of darkness. Fred?
Today there was an event for Turning Point USA, a little concert over at the Yacht Club that I helped set up and didn't get to attend it. But the interesting thing about Turning Point was they simply, in today's world, what we see that sin is no longer shameful and it's in your face. Mm-hmm. And when it's presented with the truth, it becomes violent. And that violence manifested itself in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Mm-hmm. And a man who who just wanted to listen and wanted to understand people's arguments and try to, basically point them towards God and family. And it's shocking, but it's the lack of shame anymore. Mm-hmm. So even in the light, they practice their sin because they're so proud of it. They even call it pride, right, for that matter. So it's if we can teach shame again, maybe, or public humiliation, maybe that can stir the culture in a different direction. But I think shame's missing.
Well, we have a problem. The Lord talked about it in the Old Testament. I can't remember the passage. It talks about where Israel lost their ability to blush, to be embarrassed, right? It seems like we live in a world today where people just aren't embarrassed about the way they live. They're not at all ashamed. They don't care. In fact, if you bring it up, you're the problem, right? You're the problem because you're talking about it. You're the hateful one because you're trying to share with them God's plan. It can be very, very frustrating. There can be a lot of face palming going on when you're trying to talk to people like that. But you're right. I mean, it's the lack of concern or care of people today with the way that they live their life, the way they dress, the way they conduct themselves, the way they talk. There's a neighbor of ours that Kath and I have to drive by this person's house several times a day. And he doesn't put out the little yard signs, political yard sign. He puts out banners. 6 foot across by 3 foot deep with all kinds of vulgar, hateful, mean, F-bombs, everything on these huge banners. And we were talking, me and another friend of mine, a neighbor of mine, we were talking about, do we go to this guy's house and just ask him, can you tone this down just a little bit? We got kids standing on bus stops within eyeshot of your house with all of that nastiness written on there. Do you think you could save the 7-year-olds from that? Would you be okay with that? And neither one of us have the courage to go up and knock on the door because I'm kind of afraid I'll get shot for trying to talk to this guy. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a coward, but that's the world we live in. There is no shame. The world so many times just doesn't care, and that's part of our job, isn't it? To teach shame, to teach blushing, to teach embarrassment over behavior. It's not going to be met. Most of the time, our message is not going to be met well with people in the world. Don?
That's kind of like what Jesse was bringing up this morning. We get desensitized.
We do.
I remember when I went to the Air Force, I'd seen a movie, a comedy, I can't remember, while I was in the Air Force or just before, and I was stationed up in Illinois, and my aunt and uncle lived in Indianapolis. And it was real close to my base. So we went there. My aunt was working, so my uncle said, you want to go see a movie? So we went to the movies, and that was on. I said, oh, that movie's so funny. So we go in there, and right in the middle of it, he's going, oh, no, oh, no. And I didn't even remember the part that came up, but, you know, it's like when you're with someone,
Right.
a grandparent or somebody,
Yes.
you notice that, well, I shouldn't be watching this. And you don't even realize it
Right.
until that gets, you know, it's kind of in your face when you're with someone who is not sensitized to it.
Right.
And,
Right.
and you know, I think.
I've done that before where I've recommended people to go see this. And then because I recommended them, I thought, I haven't seen this movie in years. I thought that was a great movie. I want to go look at it again. And in 15 minutes, I'm calling them. Sorry about that. I forgot about this scene, and that scene. Because it's so common. It's like, you know, people say things or something happens. You're like, meh. We've almost become a meh to sin.
It's like
haven't we?
it says, they say what's evil is good and what's good is evil. I mean, that's the way
That's
it
where we're
is
at.
now.
Yeah. Woe to any nation. Sin is a reproach to any nation, right? I mean, and that's where we're at. And what is striking to me is that our country is still, I don't know, is this the most godly country, God-fearing country in the world? I don't know. I mean, I think Christianity is strongest in the U.S., at least from what I understand, than any other place in the world. So maybe with all of our issues, we might still be the best thing that's out there as far as a nation goes, being godly and at least expressing a love of God, because Christianity outside the U.S., I don't know what percentage of the population outside the U.S. is Christian. So that's just part of the world that we live in, though, right? Our values, the things that so many of us that are older grew up on, is rapidly changing in this country. Rapidly changing. And not in a good way, I don't think. So hopefully we can make some headway. I know a preacher years ago told me the darker it gets, the brighter the light shines of the gospel. And I'm seeing that happen. U.S., everything's getting dark, and you're seeing a resurgence. People fighting back and people resisting that weren't resisting 20 years ago, but it's gotten bad enough they're like, okay, I can't do this anymore, right? So we have a little bit of that. That's a good thing, but we have to keep building on that. We can't stop it, right? So any other thoughts? We got just a couple minutes left. Any other words or thoughts at all? Okay, let's look here at one last verse. Let's go to 2 Peter. 2 Peter chapter 2. I want to read up, this is just some language here that just talks about how ungodly our world can be. But to me, there's some hope here. This is dealing with, if you move back up, this is in verse 4. This is going back to Noah in his time. For if God, and this is just the nature of sin, God dealing with sin here. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness reserved for judgment. Notice this, example number 2. He did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness. 6, if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction, leaving them in ashes. I remember Ivan Minglin, a Bible class teacher Kathy and I both had growing up in Indiana in Kokomo. He would tell us that Sodom and Gomorrah was located under what is now the Dead Sea. That Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. God said nothing would ever live there again. And nothing is living there to this day where those places were at. That's what he taught. I don't know if that's exactly the truth, but that's what I remember hearing. And it impressed upon me the idea that when God says this isn't going to happen, it stops happening right then. God dealt with 2 cities, turned them into ashes. Look at verse 7. If he rescued righteous Lot, oppressed by the sensual conduct of unprincipled men, by what he saw and heard, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from temptation and to keep the unrighteous under punishment for the day of judgment. That's what we have to look forward to if we love the darkness rather than the light. He will keep them where they're going to be. That's the message that we got to try to share with people, is to stay away from this. Don't allow yourself to be tormented. Come out of the world. Look at what God's done. Look at what he did in the very beginning with Noah, what he did with Sodom and Gomorrah, what he did with the people of in Lot's day. What's he going to do in our day? That's what we have to that's the message that we got to get out. Okay, appreciate your comments. Any final thoughts or comments? Okay, thank you.